everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in. Dr. Judy here, Dr. Judy WTF. And tonight's show, today, whatever time zone you're in, is about stopping smoking. And I am so close to releasing my book, Kick It, Stop Smoking and Be the Cause of Better Outcomes for Your Life. And this is a book that you could use to stop smoking cold turkey or gradual withdrawal. And also, of course, if you don't smoke, you should still stay on and listen because we're going to apply this to habits and addictions. And this is just one of a series of books that I'm going to be writing and releasing. And the first one, of course, is going to be Kick It. And interestingly enough, I released a book called Kick It back in, 1986, I believe. And that was before I was a psychologist, before I became a therapist, and I was a stop smoking counselor. So, just a little bit about that. I had a father who was a smoker. He's no longer alive, but at the time he was a smoker, and I was desperately trying to get him to quit smoking. And so I decided to pursue avenues that would teach me how to help people stop smoking. And I ended up at the 𝗪𝗓 Center, which was a stop smoking clinic back in the day. And I became their most favorable counselor, and people would request me all the time until I decided it's time for me to be entrepreneurial and break away and start my own stop smoking clinic. So I started Habit Breakers, and soon after I was approached by a publisher to publish a book on stop smoking, which fortunately sold over 250,000 copies and then went into another edition. And now I decided to rewrite it. Why? Because I'm a psychologist now and I understand on a deeper level that smoking and all addictions are just a way to fill what I refer to as the hole in the soul. So we're going to jump right into it. And first, I want to show you guys the cover because this will be out hopefully in the next few weeks and available to be purchased. And you can see that the cover is very metaphorical for breaking the chains of addiction, snapping that cigarette. Indeed, this does not only apply to cigarettes, but it applies to vapes and other nicotine products. So let's go through what is this thing called um, nicotine addiction and nicotine habit, and what's the difference? So there are two aspects to this. Number one, there is an addiction. So, as most people know, nicotine is a highly addictive substance and it's more difficult to withdraw from than heroin. And that's actually something that the Surgeon General back in the 1980s, 𝗬𝗎𝗫𝗀𝗀𝗡, said. He said that it was a more difficult habit and addiction to break than heroin. And I think part of the reason is that because it's so kind of, I don't know if innocent looking is the right term, but it's social. It's all over the place. Heroin has a connotation uh, 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 of being kind of, out there and a drug addict and fringe and all of that. But cigarettes somehow got into the circle of what was labeled very cool at the time. And if you remember, if you're old enough to remember the commercials of the Marlboro Man riding around on his horse, and then the commercials about women smoking with their long red fingernails, and advertising about the mintiness and the freshness of the cigarette and associating it with fresh clouds and air and beauty and sexiness, sex appeal, macho-ness, and just a general feeling of, hey, this is very cool. And then I'm kind of giving you a little history about my smoking journey here, my stop smoking journey. Back in the late 90s, I think it was somewhere around 1999. Actually, I remember because it was the year that my mother passed away. And she was a smoker too, but she quit the habit a long time ago, not with my help. And at that time, I was invited on the Roseanne Barr show, and they were doing a big stop smoking uh, show on teenage smoking, and Richard Branson was there, and Eddie Griffin was there, and Roseanne was there, and Roseanne's daughter was there. It was a lot of fun for me and also very scary because it was CBS. It was my first time on big time TV, and I remember going on the stage, and if anybody knows Roseanne, you can kind of like hear her voice. And welcome Dr. Judy Rosenberg. And at that time, I was so nervous, I thought I would wet my pants, quite frankly, but somehow I made it across the stage. And I sat around with a bunch of people who were passionate about quitting smoking. And that was sort of like the launch of another version of Kick It in video form. And now that I know more about the habit and addiction, um, I decided to approach it from many angles. Number one, the habit. Number two, the psychological addiction, which is what I mentioned, has the hole in the soul that addictions fill, that habits fill, and also approach it from the point of view of what it takes to quit smoking, which are many things. Number one, you have to have your reason. It can't be, well, I went to the doctor and the doctor recommended that I stop, or can't be, I'm quitting smoking because my girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, lover, child is telling me that I should. It's a weak reason. A stronger reason might be I can't stand being controlled by these cigarettes. So that was my mother's reason, actually. So I'm using her reason for why she so strongly leaned into quitting smoking. And that was what I call her big eye. So if you are addicted, if you have a habit and an addiction, you need to come up with your big why. Otherwise, it's too flimsy. It's not going to work. Any questions so far in the chat room?
There is a question. In fact, before we even got on, it sounds like someone that has been dealing with smoking for a while. It says, I've been a chimney smoker. Started smoking when I was 15, quit when I was 40. Why? Pure economical reasons. If you want to quit, quit your sugar addictions first. Sugar is the real killer. And then
Okay,
he goes on to go ahead,
yeah,
but
go ahead.
no, and he also says, if you could quit sugar, you probably won't be. If you can't quit sugar, you probably won't be able to quit smoking.
Okay, well, I like where this is going because both nicotine and sugar take you on a wild ride. They pick you up and they let you down. And then they create a craving, and then you have to fulfill on the craving, whether it be sugar or nicotine or cocaine or heroin or whatever it is, and then they plunge you. And so the association between sugar and smoking is a very interesting one because when you are plunged from too much sugar, or actually when you're spiked from too much sugar, and then you drop because the sugar starts being absorbed by the body, it creates a cycle of addiction. And so that sugar low, so to speak, pairs nicely with the nicotine, which is a stimulant drug, as is sugar. So, in essence, they're both boosting each other and dropping and rising and falling. So, you end up having a mood swing like this. So, certainly, if you quit sugar, you're in better shape because you're not having these high and low mood swings, and then the cigarette is riding on the highs and the lows. So thank you very much for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. And so if there is anybody who wants to call in, of course, you do know this is a call in show. And that number is 323 524 2599. And most of you know already that I like to talk to you live rather than lecture. Um, I'll be happy to answer questions in the chat room. However, obviously, I prefer a live discussion. So let's talk about the average smoker. I think there are still, I don't remember the number, like 30 million smokers left. I think that's in the United States only and more worldwide. And that's a big number. And why is it a big number? Because um, it worked itself into, and it always has worked itself into the teenage and even the population of children. I remember going to elementary schools and high schools back in the day and lecturing about the effects of smoking and the addictive qualities. And you kind of have to start early because if you don't start early, then um, kids are very prone to hooking into the habit and addiction. And if you're a parent, not a good idea to role model smoking to your children because if you role model this, your children are at least twice as likely to be smokers. Remember, it's not what you say, it's what you do. And they will copy you. So if you're picking up that cigarette and waving it around and blowing smoke out and looking really cool in their eyes, then they'll want to grab some of that image and take it with them. Now, if you're a woman and you smoke, please understand that smoking is the number one cause for small for birth infants. So it actually interferes with the fetus's growth if you're smoking. So as your fetus, you're passing along all of those poisons. They do go through the barriers and end up in the system of the fetus and the child. And of course, vasoconstriction is a big deal. So if you're a smoker, especially if you're diabetic and you're smoking, you're well on your way to losing a limb. And if you're eating sugar, starches in particular, and other forms of sugar and smoking, you probably are going to develop diabetes, and the smoking is going to constrict your vessels and not allow for the blood to flow to your extremities, which is a horrible idea for the longevity of you and your limbs. I think we all know the major diseases associated with smoker, like lung cancer and emphysema, which is where the little sacs, the air sacs in your lungs burst and reduce your capacity to process oxygen because there are just less air sacs to take in the oxygen and deliver it into the bloodstream. So there are so many medical reasons to stop smoking. And as the other person brought up, there are so many economic reasons to stop smoking. It's a bloody fortune to smoke. Not only to smoke, but to vape. I mean, this stuff is really expensive. And so by stopping smoking, you save a bundle. But, again, these reasons may not be your big why. They may just not. But before you begin any process, and I elaborate why the big why is so important in my Kick It, Stop Smoking book, and how without the big why, you can't even really get the party started. So I want to talk a little bit about gradual withdrawal versus cold turkey. So some people like to plunge into things. They feel that they're ready and they don't want to take the time to wean off. They don't want to break the habit slowly. They just want to take a block of time. And in the book, it is a 5-day block of time. And during the 5 days, you put aside uh, a time where you make an appointment with yourself to do the Kick It, Stop Smoking process. And this is really a process that involves preparation, it involves mental and physical preparation. It involves good nutrition. We are going to be distributing vitamins, Kick It vitamins, for those who want to recoup all of the vitamins that have been killed off in the bloodstream because of smoking. So it's just a plan where you're going to be hydrating and eating healthy, or hopefully organic food, and reintroducing good nutrients into your bloodstream. It's also an environmental preparation where you have to set up your environment for success and bring in substitutes like oh, instead of in the ashtray, you might have some pistachio nuts, or maybe you'll have some cinnamon sticks in there, or mints if you like, or anything to draw you away from the habit. Okay, so that's one of the linchpins, is setting up for success. Another linchpin in this cold turkey approach, as well as the gradual withdrawal approach, is aversion therapy. Now, let me explain what aversion therapy really is. It's just like it sounds. You want to develop an aversion to cigarettes. And so, in the course of the plan, there is a plan to associate smoking not with that, it's that wonderful breathing process. You start learning to associate smoking with coughing and rasping and the smell and the smell in your hair, the smell in your clothes, the smell on your couch or in your car. You start associating the cigarette with the nuisance of having to get up all the time and grab one, or sit outdoors at a restaurant because they won't allow you to go inside and smoke, or have your dog or your cat look at you. And that's something that I want to make a big deal about, because if you smoke, the people and the pets around you are inhaling your side stream smoke as well. And so this is no joke. If you want to be ruining your life and your lungs and your hearts and your vessels and your eyesight and your skin and your yellowing of the teeth and all of that, not a good idea. However, now that you're smoking, you have to also consider who is next to you. Are you smoking next to your dog, your cat? Do you know that they're also inhaling that nicotine? They're also inhaling the tar and the other chemicals from the cigarette, especially if you have children in the car. I remember back in the day, my parents used to smoke in the car, and I would always have to roll down the windows because it smelled so badly. But then when the windows rolled down, the ashes flew in the back, which is where I was sitting. And I remember developing this huge blister on my stomach. And I was really angry. Actually, I was really angry at my parents for being smokers. And I couldn't say anything because, like I say in my Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect book, childhood is a hostage situation. And so I think there it is. If you don't have a copy, please get one from Amazon.com. And if you want a PDF version, then you can request one off of my website, psychologicalhealingcenter.com. And so a lot of what I've talked about over the years, as many of you know, is narcissism. So let's relate smoking to narcissism, because I thought it was pretty narcissistic of my parents to smoke and not consider my feelings, and laugh off that I got a blister on my belly, or laugh off that I was coughing and complaining, and pretty much telling me to shut up, and not make a big deal of it. Now we know more. We know more that children are getting sick from it. And, as I mentioned, pets are getting sick from it. And your friends who inhale your smoke, or coworkers. Back in the day, I used to be invited into corporations, and I'm still willing to set that up if anybody has a company with smokers. The campaign went something like, put out that smoke with an employer benefit that also benefits the employee, meaning that smokers at the workplace are always taking breaks. They're getting sicker and taking sick leave and disturbing their coworkers. And yeah, I think there's a question there. Please go ahead.
We do have a couple questions, and I actually have my own experience because I grew up in a household that also were smokers. My grandparents, my uncles, my mom, my siblings, so everybody around me except for my father, who he drank, but he didn't smoke. I
Okay.
was pretty much the one that never did any of that. But for me, as a child, I didn't feel like I had a choice but to be around it. It just seemed normal, even though I hated it.
Right.
But when I went to college, I finally told my mother, I said, unfortunately, I'm not coming back home unless when I come home, you guys smoke outside. Because I said, I'm tired of coming home and leaving with all my clothes and everything smelling like smoke when I went back to college.
I love
And
that you did that.
she actually, my mom made her and everybody else smoke outside when I was home. So I
Oh,
know, I know. But
that's
yeah.
powerful, Tony, really, because most parents will just blow it off, pun intended,
Right.
you know, and just say, well, too bad, then don't come home, or you go outside, or, but I think your mother must have cared about you, loved
Oh,
you
she
very much,
did. Yeah.
and that was why she made it easy for you to come home. She wanted you home,
Yeah, and
okay?
she knew I was serious too. So it wasn't just a bluff because that was just how I was. But um,
That's how you are.
and are, yes, especially if it's something I believe in or disagree with. I do stand my ground with, especially when it comes because I said it was my health. Um,
Yes.
and but I do remember the days of driving across country and the cars filled with smoke and the windows are barely cracked. Yeah, I can't believe we actually lived
Yeah,
like that.
I had that experience, and I believe in cursed by designs, and all of that was powerfully influencing me to one day be the cause of helping people stop smoking. And
Hmm.
I particularly love this book. I really mean it. I love this book. It's just so deep and psychological, and it hits on all areas, like I mentioned, the habit, the addiction, the big why,
Hmm.
the hole in the soul. So what I like to do is do a little bit of mind mapping, which
Okay.
is what I love to do. And also in this book, I am utilizing the mind map
Ooh,
as an approach to quitting
nice.
smoking. So, unlike all of the other books out there that are more behavioral and clinical, or I don't know what they are, but this one is written by a psychologist, aka me, and I go deep into the dynamics of the hole in the soul, which is kind of like the why of why people smoke. So let's take a look at panel number one, and we can shrink it. Okay, so panel one is the wounds of childhood. So there are uh, many of them: physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, smothering, selfish parents that are narcissistic. I mean, these are the abuses and the neglects. And in the book, I ask people to go through an exercise that helps them to discover what kind of smoker they are. And so if you move to panel number two, you could see that people have reactions to their wounds of childhood. And so in this reactionary piece of the mind map, which refers to the amygdala, which is the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn part, um, smokers will smoke for countless reasons. Their amygdala's not happy, so they're going to smoke to soothe themselves. They're going to smoke to control. And the other kind of smoker is the performance smoker. So there's the control smoker, there is the smoker who smokes to calm down, soothe, self soothe, and then there is the um, smoker who likes to smoke to stay in control. So people who come from households that are very out of control will smoke to stay in control. people who come from households where there's a lot of emotional abandonment, I'm just using these as examples, will smoke, let's say, to soothe themselves. Um, People who come from an environment where there is a desire to please the parents, like a narcissistic parent who says, you will only be loved if you perform for me, become performance smokers. And then in panel 3, they encode horrible core beliefs like, you know, I'm not good enough. I'm out of control. I have to please to be loved, and on and on and on. So, in the course of mind mapping your smoking habit, and again, I'm going to be writing several books that will address habits and addictions. We work through all of the panels and your wounds of childhood, which create the hole in the soul and the reactions and the encodings. And then we move into what I call the chaotic effects of smoking. So if you look at panel number 4, you will see that smoking creates chaos. What I mean by chaos is that it creates um, times, circumstances where you come across having to go into another room to smoke, or you have to go out of your way to smoke outdoors, or you have to um, break up a relationship because they don't like you smoking, or you're yelling and screaming at your children because they're pressuring you to quit smoking and you want them to lay off. So this is what I mean by chaos. And then because of all the chaos, you defend harder. So the defense, obviously, the strongest defense in smoking is the addiction and the habit. So what is a defense mechanism? Smoking is one of them. So you smoke to make sure that you keep people away, or you smoke to um, make sure that you don't feel your pain, or you smoke to numb out, which is so you don't feel your pain, or you smoke to avoid avoid people, okay, or to control your circumstances, or to appear socially um, accepted by your peers. So that's what I mean by the defense mechanism. Unfortunately, this is not a defense mechanism that is meant to protect. It looks like it does, sort of temporarily, but at the end of the day, these defense mechanisms will break down. And that's what I mean by panel number 6. So, breakdown is when the smoking becomes toxic and it creates disease, or it creates a sense of dis-ease, or it becomes so cumbersome and costly and environmentally unfriendly that you can't. Okay, so that's the breakdown. Now I want to go back into this process and talk about nicotine withdrawal. Okay, so remember, there's the habit and then there is the addiction, and they go together because the addiction reinforces the habit, and then the habit feeds the addiction. So they pair nicely, kind of like wine and cheese, if you know what I mean. Okay. So what has to happen is I'm talking now about the cold turkey approach. During the cold turkey approach, you pick your 5 days where you're going to be stopping smoking. And in that process, you have to understand that you are going through withdrawal. You're going to go through withdrawal. And what is just the withdrawal symptoms? Inability to concentrate, anxiety, could be that your moods are very low. You might get depressed, you might get sleepy, you might get a little bit bitchy and angry, intense cravings. You feel like you can't do this anymore, and extreme cravings for nicotine. However, remember, withdrawal only lasts 42 48 to 72 hours. So when I had my habit breakers clinic back in the day, I would watch people struggle through day one and day two, and then by day three, they'd start feeling less ruled by the drug. Okay. And in order to help flush out the drug, I have tips on how to help move the nicotine out of the bloodstream through hydration and sauna and bath and exercise and so on. But it's very important to know that as you get closer and closer to withdrawal, your body is going to rebel and scream, I need nicotine. I need it. I need it. I need it. And so we teach you to see that as a positive thing because it's meaning that you are nearing the end of the chemical addiction part of your process. Now, what's very interesting is that people think to themselves, oh, like after I'm done with the chemical part, I could just have a puff here and there because I don't have a lot of nicotine in me, and one puff on a cigarette isn't enough to re-addict you chemically, which is true. One puff is not really enough. However, throughout the book, I talk about how one puff re-addicts people, not chemically, but habitually. So remember how in several shows, if you've seen any of my shows, I talk about intermittent reinforcement, which I relate to narcissism because narcissists will love bomb you and then they'll withdraw their love and then they'll give you amazing presents and then they won't pay attention to you. It's sort of like that. If you have one puff on a cigarette after you quit smoking, you will have reinforced all of the hundreds and thousands of urges it took to get to that one puff. Okay, so we have a question. Go ahead.
Yes, this is about relapsing, and that also it happened to my sister where she quit for 15 years and then re-smoked or started smoking again. But it
Yes.
says, why do so many people relapse after quitting? Is it more of a physical dependence or emotional attachment?
I think it's more of an emotional thing. So they think, like I was mentioning, oh, it's my birthday, I could just have one puff. Oh, it's our anniversary, let's just smoke a cigarette.
Right.
Oh, and sometimes it's a breakdown, like a divorce or something. You get fired from work or something traumatic happens in life, and you somehow it's that slippery slope where you think, oh my God, I need it as a coping mechanism. And that's why the book is so useful because it dismantles all these beliefs that the cigarette gives you power and control and strength and all that. So by doing the process, you're dismantling the reasons people relapse. However, relapse is very common, and I regard it as information. So when people relapse, if they do, then don't take a break. Don't keep smoking, which is probably what people want to do. You jump right back on the horse and you just keep going from there. And you get back into the aversion sessions, you get back into hydration, you get back into the steps that took you to get to the quit smoking point. So all of this works together: the habit, the addiction, the hole in the soul, the reasons people quit smoking, the whys that are so important, um, relapse prevention. And one of the things about relapse prevention is to know what your triggers are. So you have to understand that if you're drinking alcohol and you're at a bar, you're probably going to be more prone to relapsing. If you hang out with smoker friends, you're going to be more prone to relapsing. If you do other drugs, you're going to be more prone to relapsing. And speaking of other drugs, when you're quitting smoking, don't go for the other drugs. That's just another way to fill the hole in the soul. You can't be drinking and quitting smoking. You can't be doing cocaine or smoking weed or anything like that while you're quitting smoking. Really, the best thing to do is to feel those raw feelings so you can address them. and you could see where they came from, and you can go back to the source of the issue, the hole in the soul, the childhood wounds, and address those, because that's where this whole thing got started. Okay, and then the nicotine addiction is just a way that made this whole process stick really well and repeat itself. And now you're doing the 𝗬𝗏𝗏 habitually, you're doing the spin cycle, and chemically you're also doing the 𝗬𝗏𝗏 repeat of having the nicotine um, in your system. One thing I want to talk about is the myth of smoking, okay? And I get into this in the book. So people actually believe that smoking makes them more creative, that smoking makes them smarter, that smoking makes them feel more in control, that smoking makes them feel more social, that smoking makes them feel more relaxed, all of the above. Okay, so that's a lot of power that people give to smoking, a heck of a lot of power. But when you really think about it, and I did my dissertation on this, and I discovered that it takes about a handful of seconds for the nicotine to hit the brain, but the smoking's effect of relaxation happens immediately. So, what is it that's really relaxing you? If it takes about, let's say, 5 to 7 seconds for the nicotine to hit, and you take a drag on the cigarette and you're nice and relaxed, what is going on? Because it's not the nicotine that is hitting you. So I want to put that out to the audience. Any guess? What is relaxing you? Anybody out there want to put something into the chat room? What do you think is really relaxing you when it comes to smoking?
Actually, somebody's typing. Let's see what they say. Well, one says, somebody said, what's relaxing, it's doing something with their hands. It's like it's keeping them busy.
That's part of it. Yeah, good answer. That's part of it. Okay. But what's relaxing you? So think about it. What are you doing when you're smoking? That should be a dead giveaway to the answer. What are you doing when you're smoking?
Puffing.
Yeah, you're puffing, but you're also inhaling,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
before it hits the brain, before the nicotine hits the brain, the oxygen is hitting you, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
deep breathing. So, what's really happening, and this is the trick, is that smoking, just like a good narcissist, right, steals the show. It's saying, oh, you feel better because of me, and you're in control because of me, and you're relaxed because of me, and you feel social because of me. And that is the biggest lie. Okay? So in the book, I talk about this myth that the big lie is that smoking relaxes you, and it's really the oxygen that does.
Hmm. That's good.
Okay? And then the other big lie is that when you smoke, it creates the urge to want to smoke more. And so when you do smoke more, you relax. But really, what's relaxing you is that you are fulfilling on the urge to smoke. So you see, it creates the problem that you then use to solve the problem. And that's how it keeps you stuck and hooked. And you know, I relate it to narcissism because it's sort of like the vampiring effect of a narcissist, right? It takes more than it gives. So you pay all this money, you give it all this credit, you let it eat up your clothes and your carpeting and the burnt holes in the furniture and the fetus in your womb and the children around you and your coworkers and you know everything, right? You let it ruin your life, so to speak. And what does it give you? This fake sense of control, power, relaxation, social fitting in, okay? And then we basically we're we're projecting these great qualities onto the cigarette when all it's really giving you is the nasties, okay? And all it's really doing is robbing you of the ability to breathe deeply. And so part of this process is really learning how to breathe and learning how to self soothe and learning to take your power back. Okay. And so when all of these pieces come together, the goal of the book is I came up with this term and I'll share it with you: destination disgust. Okay. So kick it helps you get to destination disgust. So, what you associate with smoking is wonderfulness and fun and pleasure and break time and sex and I don't know what else. And really, we're shifting that. We're paradigm shifting you out of the lie, and we are in essence, we're recoding the meaning and the sensation of cigarettes. And what we're doing is we're substituting it with the aversion training so that rather than feeling so turned on to smoking, you're now actively participating in turning yourself off to smoking. And can you imagine when I come up with my other books, which I will, we're going to be using this model to turn off to all kinds of habits and addictions. And um, also, I'm asking the audience, you're welcome to write me and suggest which books you would want me to write so that we can address the aspects of your life that are controlling you, aspects of your life where you are in what I call the double dungeon of darkness and psychological prison. So any questions in the chat room about smoking, the habit, the addiction, how they work together, why it is so important to have the big why is it so important to learn relapse prevention skills, why is it so important to understand the lies associated with smoking, why it's so important to heal your hole in the soul, which is why you fill it with drugs, sex, and rock and roll, or whatever you do. Any other questions in that chat room?
There's a couple. Bonita, thank you, Bonita, for the question. And just it says, you have to be careful when you think what you think when you're smoking. When Indian chiefs smoke their peace pipes, their thoughts rise into the smoke into the heavens. And then she asked, what is the name of your book? So we can put that book up there again. So she must have just tuned in.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, look, I'm a big believer. Yeah, it's called Kick It, Stop Smoking, and Be the Cause of Better Outcomes for Your Life. And you can do the cold turkey way or you can do the gradual withdrawal way, which I'll get into in a second. But you see, what you brought up is that intention is causal. So if you're a chief and you're smoking to please the gods, okay, then that doesn't mean that you're going to not get addicted to the nicotine, and that doesn't mean that the nicotine is going to do great things for the body. And it's a tricky one because if it's a ritualistic thing and it's meant to enhance some sort of a intention, um, then stick with just the intention and don't make it an excuse to continue to bring it into your everyday life. Okay, so there's a difference between rituals, like having a glass of wine during a ritualistic occasion, versus drinking wine all the time and saying, oh, I'm doing my ritual, I'm doing my ritual. No, you're not. You're not doing any ritual. You're reinforcing a nasty habit that we all know is toxic, and there is no safe level of alcohol, and it corrodes your body. So not only does it do that, but it also corrodes your mind. So please don't fool yourself into thinking that rituals, when continued on as daily habits, are going to be constructive in any way to your life. Any other questions there?
We do, but the same with my mother. Just to go back because this is very familiar to me. My mother, before she quit, because she ended up she lost some part of her feet because of circulation issues, and ended up getting emphysema. But before she quit, the first thing she would do: get up, light a cigarette, smoke a couple puffs, then go use the restroom. Then she'd come back and keep smoking. So, I mean, it is this habit, and that was her ritual of getting up every day doing the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, look how controlled she was. My father too, after he had it was heart surgery or lung surgery, I don't remember, but the doctor said you can't smoke, and he didn't listen, and he lit up a cigarette and he put the pillow to his chest so he wouldn't rip open the stitches.
Mm.
Okay, so if that doesn't tell you how powerful this thing is, and
Well,
what your
yeah.
mother did after experiencing emphysema and all, the extremities, loss of toes or whatever she had to go through,
Mm-hmm.
you sacrifice yourself in
Yeah.
the name of what? Okay, the habit and addiction.
Yeah. No, and my uncle also, he ended up getting, my grandfather died of lung cancer, and my uncle, my dad's brother, got lung cancer, and he smoked throughout his treatment, and even the doctor asked him to stop, and he would not.
Not
Which,
uncommon.
yeah, it doesn't make
Absolutely.
sense, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely not uncommon. And I want to just touch on this point before the end of the show. Some people don't want to do cold turkey. They tried it, and it was too intense, and the timing wasn't good. And that's another thing, as I talk about in the book, the timing. You don't want to quit smoking right after some tragedy. It's
Mm-hmm.
too much, okay? So grieve and do what you need to do, and then pick a day. Some people like a gradual withdrawal approach, and in my book, I put the maximum at 3 weeks. And during that 3 week process, you are developing an aversion towards cigarettes, and at the same time, you're eliminating certain cigarettes. Like maybe you eliminate your morning one, or you eliminate your social one, or you eliminate, So in the book, it's advised that you're eliminating certain groups of cigarettes. Week one, you do one group, week two, another, week three, another, and all the while you're practicing the aversion therapy, so you keep associating the cigarettes with this horrible, horrible feeling, these horrible sensations. So it's weakening the link, so to speak. In gradual withdrawal, what is nice about it is that the nicotine withdrawal is gradual, okay? And so you don't necessarily feel these intense cravings, because you're slowly but surely titrating down the amount that you smoke. And by the third week, you're not smoking very much. You've got new associations with cigarettes. You're building better habits. You're addressing your hole in the soul. And so this is a very profound book. I'm really pleased with how it's turned out. It's just about ready to be uploaded, and we're working on the vitamin portion of this so that people can replenish their body with Kick It, Stop Smoking, recuperative vitamins. And I'm very, very excited about this. And of course, I will be writing other books on breaking other habits and addictions. And any other last minute questions from the chat room
Actually,
or?
yes, and I think this is an important one. It says,
Mhm.
"What do you think about switching to vape?"
Well, this addresses vape. So even though I
Oh,
didn't say vape, vape, schmape, smoking, it's all the same thing. It's just a nice little trick. Um, if you're vaping, then you're still vasoconstricting. But if you don't have a big why as to why you want to stop vaping, if you think it's so safe, think again. It's still vasoconstricting. It still has a lot of chemicals. it's still filling the hole in the soul. It's not really allowing you to address the loneliness or the pain or the anger or whatever. And so think twice about how nice and safe it is compared to a cigarette. I mean, maybe in some respects you're not getting all the chemicals, but you're getting other chemicals. You're still getting the nicotine and you're still filling your hole in the soul. So psychologically, you're not really growing. Okay, I hope that answers it.
I think it did.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, and look forward to hearing from you. If you want more information about the release of the book, you can go to 𝗧icologicalhealingcenter.com and be in contact with me. And it will eventually have its own website, and it will be, of course, up on my 𝗧icologicalhealingcenter.com website. And for those of you who have not seen my new website, please take a look at it. I've got the mind map there, and it is sort of like a little slideshow bringing you from encoding to decoding to recoding. So watch the little slideshow. It's very educational. Thank you very much, everybody, and I will see you next time. Good night. Hold on.